Poor deaf girl rejected at a blind date. But when a black single dad at the next table witnessed her humiliation, his hands moved in a language that would change 3 lives forever. She sat alone, checking her phone for the 5th time in 20 minutes. Her elegant red dress now feeling like armor that couldn't protect her from what was coming. The rain hammered against the windows of the Willow and Ash Café, but nothing could drown out the sound of her heart breaking when the man across from her spoke the words that shattered her world. "I didn't know you were actually handicapped." In that moment, as tears threatened to fall, she never expected a stranger's hands to speak the words her heart desperately needed to hear. "You deserve better." "Wait. Are you deaf?" The words sliced through the ambient noise of the Willow and Ash Café like a blade. Colton's face contorted with something worse than surprise. It was disgust, pure and undisguised. Liana's brown fingers tightened around her water glass, her knuckles whitening as she fought to maintain composure. She had been waiting for 45 minutes. 45 minutes of hope slowly curdling into humiliation as other diners cast sympathetic glances her way, and now this. "I have moderate to severe hearing loss," she responded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I wear hearing aids. I mentioned this in my profile." "You said you had hearing difficulties," Colton interrupted, his fingers making mocking air quotes. "I thought you meant like sometimes you need things repeated. I didn't know you were actually—" He paused, his eyes scanning her face, stopping at her ears where her discreet hearing aids caught the light. The word that came next landed like a physical blow. "Handicapped." At the corner booth just 3 feet away, Darius Holt's jaw clenched so hard he could feel his teeth ache. His 6-year-old daughter Nyla had stopped coloring entirely, her small brown hands frozen mid-motion as she watched the scene unfold. "Daddy," Nyla signed, her movements small and worried. Why is that man being mean to the pretty lady? Darius's hands trembled as he signed back. "Some people don't understand, sweetheart. Some people are just—" He paused, searching for words gentle enough for his daughter. Unkind. But Colton wasn't finished. He was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through it as if Liana wasn't even there, as if her pain was as insignificant as background noise. "Look, this isn't what I signed up for," he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. Several nearby diners turned to stare. "I can't deal with this. Do you know how exhausting it would be, having to repeat everything? Making sure you can hear in restaurants? My friends would never let me hear the end of it. Dating someone who can't even hear properly?" Liana's spine straightened, and for a moment Darius saw something magnificent in her posture, dignity radiating from every inch of her being, despite the tears threatening to spill. "I'm a pediatric nurse," she said quietly. "I graduated from university with honors. I speak 3 languages. My hearing loss doesn't define my worth as a person." Colton stood up, his chair scraping against the floor with an ugly sound. "No offense, but I have standards. This is why people should be honest in their profiles. Wasting my Friday night because you couldn't be upfront about being disabled." The word disabled hung in the air like poison. Darius felt his body moving before his mind caught up, rising from his seat with a fluid motion that made Nyla gasp softly. But he wasn't walking toward Colton. No, that would have been expected. Instead, he positioned himself directly in front of Liana's table, his back to the cruel man who was already heading for the door. Darius's hands began to move. The movements were deliberate, graceful, each sign flowing into the next like a dance he'd performed 1,000 times for his daughter. His brown fingers shaped words in the air, his face expressing what his voice didn't need to say. "You deserve so much better than someone who can't see your worth." Liana's breath caught. Her eyes, which had been brimming with unshed tears, widened in absolute shock. This stranger, this black man she'd never seen before, was signing to her. Not just signing. He was speaking her language, the silent language that Colton had just mocked, the language that lived in the spaces between sounds. Behind Darius, Colton had paused at the door, watching with confusion and growing irritation. You know that sign language stuff? Figures, birds of a feather, right? You two deserve each other. The door slammed behind him, leaving only the echo of his ignorance and the soft jazz music playing through the cafe's speakers. Darius turned back to Liana, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. She saw kindness in his dark eyes, something genuine and unguarded. He saw strength in hers, despite the pain Colton had tried to inflict. May I? Darius gestured to the empty chair across from her. Liana nodded, still too stunned to speak. As Darius sat down, a small figure appeared beside him. Nyla, clutching her coloring book, her hearing aids glinting under the warm cafe lights. I'm sorry you had to experience that, Darius said aloud, while simultaneously signing. Some people show you who they are quickly. He did you a favor by leaving. Liana's eyes moved to Nyla, watching how the little girl's gaze tracked their hands with the intensity of someone who understood this silent conversation. Is she? Liana began, her voice soft with wonder. This is my daughter, Nyla. Darius signed and spoke. She's been losing her hearing progressively since she was 3. We're learning this journey together. There was something in the way he said it. Journey, not struggle, not challenge, but journey, that made Liana's heart shift in her chest. Here was a black father who saw his daughter's hearing loss not as a tragedy, but simply as part of who she was. Hi, Nyla signed shyly, stepping closer to Liana. You're pretty. That man was mean. Daddy says mean people are just scared of things they don't understand. A laugh bubbled up from Liana's chest, unexpected, genuine, transforming her entire face. She signed back, her movements becoming more animated. Thank you, sweetie. You're pretty too. I love your rainbow shirt. Is that a dinosaur on it? Nyla's face lit up like Christmas morning. It's a brachiosaurus. Do you know the sign for dinosaur? She demonstrated, her small hands making the shape enthusiastically. Darius watched them interact, something warm unfurling in his chest. He hadn't seen Nyla connect with someone this quickly since Marissa. The thought of his late wife brought a familiar ache, but it was softer now, less sharp than it used to be. 2 years had passed since that morning when a drunk driver had stolen her from them, leaving Darius to navigate single parenthood and Nyla's progressive hearing loss alone. He'd learned sign language out of necessity at first, staying up late watching YouTube tutorials, practicing in mirrors, his hands clumsy and uncertain. But what had started as necessity had become something beautiful, a secret language between him and his daughter, a way of saying I love you that belonged only to them. You sign beautifully, Liana said to Darius, pulling him from his thoughts. How long have you been learning? 3 years now, since Nyla's diagnosis. It was overwhelming at first. I remember sitting in the audiologist's office, listening to them explain about progressive hearing loss, feeling like the world was ending. But then, he looked at his daughter, who was now showing Liana her coloring book. Then I realized it wasn't an ending. It was just a different beginning. Liana's eyes glistened. Most people don't see it that way. My ex certainly didn't. He said my hearing loss made everything too complicated. That was his favorite word. Complicated. As if relationships aren't supposed to require effort. Can I tell you a secret? Nyla signed suddenly, looking at Liana with the serious expression only a 6-year-old could manage. Liana nodded, leaning in conspiratorially. Sometimes Nyla signed, when it's really noisy and I turn my hearing aids off, it's like having a superpower. I can make all the loud things quiet. And then Daddy and I talk with our hands, and it's like we have a magic language that not everyone knows. Darius's throat tightened. trust his daughter to find magic where others saw only limitation. "I know exactly what you mean," Liana signed back. "When I was in nursing school, after I lost most of my hearing, I thought it would end my career. But you know what? Now I work with children who are scared of hospitals, and when I show them my hearing aids, when I teach them a few signs, they realize I'm different too, and suddenly, they're not so scared anymore." "You're a nurse?" Nyla's hands moved excitedly. "Do you help sick kids?" "That's like being a superhero." Liana laughed again, and Darius realized he could watch her laugh forever. There was something about the way joy transformed her face, chasing away the shadows Colton had tried to leave there. "I almost didn't come tonight," Liana admitted, her hands stilling for a moment. "This was my first attempt at dating in 2 years. I spent 3 hours getting ready, practicing what I'd say, hoping maybe this time would be different. When he was late, I told myself it was just traffic. When he was on his phone, I said maybe he was nervous. I'm very good at making excuses for people who don't deserve them." Darius reached across the table, not touching, just placing his hand palm up on the worn wooden surface. An offer, not a demand. "We all do that sometimes. We accept less than we deserve because we think it's better than being alone. But being alone isn't the worst thing. Being with someone who makes you feel alone, that's worse." Liana looked at his offered hand for a long moment, then placed hers on top of it. Her fingers were warm, steady, despite everything that had just happened. "Daddy," Nyla signed with her free hand. "Are you making a friend?" "I hope so," Darius signed back with his free hand, looking at Liana as he did. The restaurant manager approached their table, an older black woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair. "Excuse me," she said, making sure to face Liana directly so she could read her lips if needed. "I saw what happened earlier. That young man's behavior was completely unacceptable. Your meals tonight, all 3 of you, are complimentary. It's the least we can do." Darius started to protest, but the manager held up her hand. "Please. That young woman shouldn't have her evening ruined by someone's ignorance. And sir, what you did, standing up for a stranger like that, we need more of that in this world." As the manager walked away, Liana squeezed Darius's hand. "You didn't have to do that. Stand up for me, I mean." "Yes," Darius said simply. "I did. Nyla is watching. She's learning how people should treat each other. What kind of father would I be if I let her think that man's behavior was acceptable? Besides," he added, a small smile playing at his lips, "anyone who can't see how extraordinary you are clearly needs glasses more than you need hearing aids." Liana laughed, really laughed, for the 3rd time that night. And Nyla clapped her hands in delight. "Can I ask you something?" Liana signed, her movements tentative. "Your wife, Nyla's mother, is she—" Darius's smile dimmed slightly but didn't disappear. "Marissa died 2 years ago. Drunk driver, early morning run. She never came home." He paused, his hand still for a moment. "She would have loved you. She was studying to become a sign language interpreter when Nyla was diagnosed. Said she wanted our daughter to know she was perfect exactly as she was." "She sounds wonderful," Liana signed, her eyes soft with sympathy. "She was. And she would have absolutely destroyed that man with words for what he said to you. Marissa had a gift for what she called educational decimation, tearing down ignorance with surgical precision." "Daddy tells stories about Mommy," Nyla interjected, having followed the conversation. "She's an angel now. That's why her name was Marissa. She watches us from heaven and makes sure we're okay." "That's right, sweetheart." Their food arrived, Darius and Nyla's usual orders, and the manager had taken the liberty of bringing Liana the cafe's signature pasta dish. As they ate, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Liana taught Nyla new signs, animals, colors, foods. Darius shared stories about Nyla's school, how she was the only deaf student, but how her classmates had all started learning basic signs to talk with her. "Last week," Darius said, grinning, "her entire class signed happy birthday to her in assembly. 22 first graders all signing in unison. Her teacher had been secretly teaching them for weeks. I may have cried extensively. Daddy cried so much," Nyla added with 6-year-old honesty. The principal thought he was sick. Liana shared her own stories. The little boy with cochlear implants who'd been terrified of his MRI until she showed him her hearing aids and taught him the sign for brave. The teenage girl who'd attempted suicide after progressive hearing loss, who Liana had sat with for hours, showing her YouTube videos of deaf dancers, deaf doctors, deaf athletes, proving that her life wasn't over, just different. "That's why I put it in my dating profile," Liana explained. "My hearing loss. I wanted to be upfront, to avoid exactly what happened tonight. But I guess some people only see what they want to see." "His loss," Darius signed firmly. "His complete, absolute, catastrophic loss." As the evening wore on, the café began to empty. Nyla had moved to sit next to Liana, showing her every page of her coloring book, explaining the story behind each picture. Liana listened, watched with genuine interest, asking questions, making suggestions. "She doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly," Darius signed to Liana, while Nyla was distracted by choosing the perfect crayon. "She's been shy since Marissa, since we lost her mom. But with you, it's like she recognizes something." "A kindred spirit," Liana signed back. "We're part of the same tribe, she and I, the beautiful Silence tribe." Darius had never thought of it that way, but watching his daughter and this remarkable woman communicate with such easy joy, he understood. They shared something beyond hearing loss. They shared the knowledge that different didn't mean less than. "It's getting late," Darius finally said, noting it was past Nyla's bedtime. The little girl was starting to yawn, her signs becoming slower. "Of course." Liana started to stand. "Thank you for everything, for showing me that not everyone is like Colton." "Wait," Darius said, pulling out his phone. "Nyla and I have breakfast every Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, Magnolia Pancake House on Cherry Street. They have the best chocolate chip pancakes in Charlotte, and it's quiet enough for easy conversation. Would you like to join us tomorrow?" Liana hesitated for a moment, and Darius felt his heart skip. Had he overstepped? Was he moving too fast? "Please come," Nyla signed sleepily. "I want to show you my book about butterflies. And Daddy makes the worst jokes, but I bet you laugh anyway." "Hey!" Darius protested, but he was smiling. Liana looked between them. This father who'd stood up for her dignity without being asked. This little girl who saw her hearing aids as something to connect over rather than something to stare at, and felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been closed since her last relationship ended, since she'd decided maybe she was meant to be alone. "I love chocolate chip pancakes," she signed to Nyla. Then to Darius, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, he confirmed, trying not to smile too widely as she entered her number into his phone. As they prepared to leave, Darius helped Nyla with her rain jacket, making sure her hearing aids were protected. Liana watched them, the practiced way Darius checked the devices without making it seem like a big deal, the way Nyla automatically tilted her head to help him. "Thank you," Liana said as they stood by the door, "for reminding me that I deserve better." "You don't need reminding. You just needed someone else to see what was already true." They parted ways in the parking lot, the rain having softened to a gentle mist. Darius buckled Nyla into her car seat, and immediately she began signing rapidly about how nice Liana was. How pretty, how she knew all the butterfly signs. Could she please come to breakfast tomorrow? "She already said yes, sweetheart," Darius reminded her. "But what if she forgets? What if she decides we're not cool enough?" Darius met his daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. Then we'll eat chocolate chip pancakes and be grateful we met her tonight. But I don't think she'll forget. In her own car, Liana sat for a moment before starting the engine. She touched the pearl necklace at her throat, a gift from her grandmother, who'd also been deaf. Never let anyone make you feel less than whole, her grandmother had signed to her years ago. You're complete exactly as you are. The right person won't see your deafness as something to overcome. They'll see it as part of your story, part of what makes you who you are. She'd thought those were just comforting words, the kind of thing grandmothers said. But tonight, watching Darius's hands shape words in the air, watching him teach his daughter that her hearing loss was a journey rather than a tragedy, she finally understood what her grandmother meant. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but inside Magnolia Pancake House, it was warm and bright. Darius and Nyla had arrived 15 minutes early, Neela insisting they get their usual table by the window. She'd brought her butterfly book and had practiced showing Liana the sign for each species. At exactly 9 o'clock, Liana walked in, shaking raindrops from her umbrella. She'd worn jeans and a soft blue sweater, her natural hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking more relaxed than she had the night before. When she spotted them, her face broke into a smile that made Darius's heart skip. "You came," Nyla signed enthusiastically, bouncing in her seat. "I promised, didn't I?" Liana signed back, sliding into the booth across from them. One breakfast became 2, then 3, then became a standing Saturday tradition. Within a month, Liana was joining them for Wednesday dinners. Within 2 months, she was at Nyla's school play, watching the little girl perform in both spoken word and sign language, tears streaming down her face as the entire auditorium erupted in both applause and silent applause, hands waving in the air. 3 months after that first night, Darius was driving Liana home from dinner when she suddenly said, "Pull over." Concerned, Darius immediately pulled into a parking lot. "Are you okay? Did I—" She silenced him by leaning across the console and kissing him. When they pulled apart, both breathing heavily, she signed, "I love you. I've been wanting to tell you for weeks, but I was scared. Scared that I was reading too much into things, that maybe you were just being kind." Darius cut her off with another kiss. Then, pulling back, he signed slowly, deliberately, making sure she could see every movement clearly in the dim light of the street lamp. "I love you too. Not because you need someone to stand up for you, you don't. Not because Nyla loves you, though she does completely. I love you because you see the world the way we do. Because you've shown us that our small family isn't broken. It's just waiting for the right person to make it complete." 6 months later, on a sunny September afternoon that was nothing like that rainy night they met, Darius proposed. He did it at the Willow and Ash Café, at the very same table where they'd met. But Darius had coordinated with the staff, and when he got down on one knee, the entire restaurant was full of their friends and family. He signed his proposal, his hands steady despite his racing heart. "You've taught me that love doesn't need words to be heard. Will you marry me?" Nyla stood beside him, holding a sign that read, "Say yes. I already picked my flower girl dress." Through happy tears, Liana signed back, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Their wedding, held the following spring at Waterfront Park, was unlike any the guests had ever attended. Every word was both spoken and signed. Nyla, as flower girl, signed a poem about family she'd written herself. 5 years after that night at the Willow and Ash Café, Nyla stood in front of her 6th grade class for a presentation about heroes. She was 11 now, confident, bright, fully fluent in ASL, and proud of who she was. She signed as she spoke clearly. "Some people think being deaf means something is missing. But in my family, being deaf brought us together. It gave me a dad who learned a whole new language for me. It brought me Liana, I call her mom now, who shows me every day that our differences make us special, not less than." That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Darius, Liana, Nyla, and now 2-year-old Marcus, who was learning to sign before he could properly speak, Nyla asked a question. "Do you think Colton ever realizes what he missed?" Darius and Liana exchanged glances. They'd never spoken his name in their house, referring to him only as that night when they told their story. "I hope," Liana said carefully, "that he learned to see people more clearly. But honestly, sweetheart, I'm grateful for his ignorance." "Grateful?" Nyla signed, confused. "If he hadn't shown his true colors, if he'd pretended to be okay with my deafness, I might have wasted months or years with the wrong person. His cruelty led me to you and your dad. It led me to our family." Darius reached over and took Liana's hand. "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. That night, I thought I was just standing up for a stranger. I had no idea I was standing up for our future." The Willow and Ash Café still holds their table. That corner booth where a single black father and his daughter changed the course of a black woman's life with simple gestures of kindness and understanding. The manager, now a friend, always smiles when they come in for their anniversary dinner each year. "Table for 4?" she asks now, smiling at little Marcus in his high chair, already signing Cookie, hopefully. "Table for family," Darius says, and Liana squeezes his hand. They'd built something beautiful from that night of humiliation. Not despite the challenges, but because of how they'd chosen to face them together. Their home was full of laughter and silence in equal measure, conversations that happened in gestures and expressions, love that didn't need sound to be heard. In the end, that rainy night at the Willow and Ash Café hadn't been an ending. It had been the beginning of everything. Colton's cruelty had inadvertently created space for something genuine to bloom. His inability to see Liana's worth had led her directly to people who saw nothing but worth in her. The Willow and Ash Café still serves the best coffee in Charlotte. Couples still meet there for first dates, hearts still break there sometimes, and hearts still mend. But in one corner booth, where a single father stood up for a stranger's dignity, where small hands signed, "You're pretty" to a woman who'd just been called handicapped, where love proved that it needs no sound to be heard. In that booth, miracles happened. And they continue to happen every time someone chooses to see worth where others see weakness. Every time someone stands up for a stranger. Every time someone signs or speaks or shows in any language, "You deserve better." Because everyone does. And sometimes, on rare and beautiful occasions, better is exactly what they find.